Hello, Becky. Here's my last vlog. I know it's a little bit late, but I figured I'd turn it in anyways and get any points that you'd be willing to give. The last few weeks have been a little stressful and busy, so. Today in this vlog, I really wanted to talk about the article Education Inequality, an Impediment to True Democracy in the United States. There were several points in this that I thought were extremely interesting and really thought provoking. So the four main points were democracy actually equals equal access, um, that education should incorporate democratic values linking to community, um, the way that our education system actually punishes schools that aren't being successful, making things worse, and the connection between income status and political participation. So, the first point, I thought it was really interesting that the article talks about how, like, by definition, democracy advocates for equal access of opportunity, which certainly isn't the language or something that I think that everyone would agree on, but I think makes sense based on the premise of what democracy is. Um, and that was a really interesting idea that I didn't really think. I mean, obviously, I think equal access is really important to resources and equal access to education and all those types of things. I never really saw it as something that was inherent to a democratic style of government. But after reading this article, I definitely see how that's the case. And part of it for me, that kind of what came up for me, um, was that seems to be in direct conflict with capitalism that doesn't really care about equal access and in fact requires um, essentially putting your foot down over the smaller person in order to be successful. And so I think it's really interesting that in the West there's kind of this idea that capitalism and democracy go hand in hand, um, whereas the reality is that they are kind of polar opposites when you think of this um, idea of access and equal access. And in reality, democracy and socialism really go hand in hand as two government systems, which is something that oftentimes people will say that, if you're in a socialist, if you're socialist, then like as though that is like anti-democracy. So I thought that was really interesting to kind of think about that. So the second idea is looking at how education, the American education, should incorporate democratic values, um, and really focusing on community values and participation and justice and fairness. And those are really things, at least from my experience, that just really aren't present in the education system anymore, if they ever were. I certainly remember my public education, elementary, junior high, and high school. Those were never conversations that we were having. It was always, here are some skills, here is some knowledge, here is some information, um, but never talking about community values and what it means to be part of a community, political participation, citizenship, those types of things. Just weren't a part of my education in public school. Um, and so I think that really kind of can can be seen as the sort of cause to where we are today, where we have so much of our citizenry that doesn't really care about community and the community that's around them, or the political process at all, or really understand it. And I think it's because that's been a failing of the American education system, is that even in places where people are getting a good education, it doesn't seem like it's something that is included or deemed important enough. Um, the last is so the third point is looking at like No Child Left Behind, and if this is something that I think has always been a little bit um, mixed feelings. I had mixed feelings about. So the statistic that um, 1 in 4 Black children and 1 in 5 Latinx children go to a high school where not graduating is the norm really stuck out to me because I know when you're looking at No Child Left Behind, essentially what No Child Left Behind says is that when you don't reach particular standards, we're going to take money away from you. Which is really the exact opposite of what should be doing is if schools are unable to meet standards for whatever reasons, rather than abandoning them and basically saying figure it out or we're going to lose even more money, we should be investing in those schools and figuring out ways to support them so they can better serve the students. The other aspect of this is the standardized test, and this is where I have some really mixed feelings. Is I don't know that a standardized test is inherently a bad idea because the idea of a high school diploma, for example, means something no matter where you go. So it's not like, well, you got a high school diploma from this particular area and we know what their education is like, so it has less weight than this other, like, potentially more rigorous school. And so it kind of creates some inequality. Whereas with the standardized test, it kind of creates a level of kind of levels the playing field a bit because it gives a standard and specific meaning to what the high school diploma means. However, it has to be done in a way that's culturally responsive to the students who are taking it, and I think that's where the largest problem is. The last point that I thought was really interesting and I hadn't really thought of a whole lot is the idea that your income level correlates with your political participation. Um, and as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, duh, that makes total sense. And so that's kind of again plays into why, because the more educated you are, the more likely, the higher your income is likely to be. And so that becomes again really important for political participation of marginalized populations, particularly people of color, kind of is dependent upon having the money and the financial means to be able to afford to participate in our democracy. And so just that was just kind of another way of like how the problem just kind of builds upon itself because as the education system gets worse, there are less people of color who have access to participate in the political system, and then it just kind of keeps spiraling downward. Um, thank you so much, Becky. I really enjoyed your class. I learned a lot of it, and I really appreciated a lot of what we did. Enjoy your summer.